My name is Gina Hassett. I'm the Executive Director here at the Frankfurt Park District. I appreciate everybody joining us this evening, whether you're live or on Zoom, so thank you so much for making the time to be here. My plan this evening is we'll go through a slide presentation. At the end of that, we'll do a Q&A. If you're on the Zoom meeting, we ask that you type your question into the chat room, and then when we get to Q&A, our staff will read those questions and or comments. If that question has been answered, whether from someone here in person, we may skip that question if it's a repeat question, so please don't be upset if that's the case. Our goal is to get to everyone's questions. If you're here in attendance and you want to ask a question when we get to the Q&A, if you could go to the mic that's at the side of the room, that way that our video recording that will be able to be heard when we for recording. If you're uncomfortable with going to the mic, there's slips of paper on the table, and you're welcome to fill out a question and put it in the basket up here, and our folks will read that during the Q&A. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and go through the slide presentation. Is everybody at home seeing our screen? If you can give us a nod if you see, awesome, thank you. Okay, for those who are here in attendance, you do have some handouts at your seat. Those same handouts are available on our website. There's the frequently asked questions sheet. There's information on the referendum, and you can find those sheets at our website at www.frankfurtparks.org. So those informational sheets are available on our website. Stacey, do you want to go to the first slide? This is kind of what Mr. Barr said. Here's our list of our current board members and our staff that are here this evening. This is an overhead image of Borg Warner. Stacey, do you know, is there a way to get that? Okay, well, we'll just work with it. Oh, there we go. All right, that'll do. So thanks at home for your patience, for those who are Zooming with us. So what we see is the opportunity for Borg Warner is creating opportunities for Frankfurt. This is an overhead view of the area. Certainly many of you might be familiar with it, but I wanted to express how expansive the Borg Warner property is. It's 7.5 acres, and the building structure that sits there, 27 acres, and the building is 225,000 square feet under the one roof. So, next slide. Why Borg Warner and why now? We had been told last year that Borg Warner would be consolidating their facilities, and with that, we thought that was an interesting opportunity. As the year has gone on, and it certainly has been an interesting year for all of us during the COVID crisis that we've been through, when we found out that they had delayed it a little bit, we were made aware that the property was being listed for sale this spring. Given that Borg Warner is adjacent to our existing main park, and that we already use their land for a baseball field, we thought it was certainly an interesting opportunity to look at this and evaluate it if it made sense. Again, given the expansive space and the green space we use, we're also concerned what will happen if and when Borg Warner is sold, if we would lose the opportunity to use the existing ball field that we're already using. With the proximity to Main Park, they're just separated by the Locust Street. The opportunity to have a campus environment for recreation seemed like an interesting opportunity to evaluate. This is an image of the baseball field that we use with Frankfurt Baseball, and you can see Borg Warner that sits at the back of the baseball field. Some other people have said, well, there's no need for this or no desire. These next two slides, this is from the Frankfurt Park District. We just finished our comprehensive plan, and when we asked residents what they would consider improvements for our park district and would they be willing to support them through tax dollars, in this slide, well, Stacey, could you maybe move that, see if you can move that menu bar up, I'll see if it'll, so starting at the bottom with the more popular, where one of them was to fund the construction of an aquatic facility, funds to maintain and enhance existing park district facilities, going up from the bottom, funds to construct with a partnership with a neighboring park district or a government body to build a multi-agency indoor recreation center. So these are some of the reasons why we thought this was a good idea to pursue. The idea wasn't just ours here alone, but it came from the comprehensive plan that the Park District had done. Stacey, you go to the next slide. Again, this was from our comprehensive plan survey from the last year, right before COVID. How much of a tax increase would you be willing to pay to fund your above choices? Again, a litany of answers, but 28% said between $1 and $5, 29% said they didn't know, 18% said over $10 a month, and 25% said $6 to $10 a month. So there was some questions posed on how much people were willing to pay for these opportunities they were looking for. Next question.
Sorry.
That's okay. Actually, you can, again, similar question. What type of aquatic facility? I think it said, you can leave it there, Stace. Go ahead. Similar questions. Again, these can be found in our master plan on our website, but this is from the village's master plan. And in their survey, when they did their master plan 2 years ago, these are the summaries from the village's page. Improvements for the downtown commercial core recommendations. And the yellow one is the one I highlighted, which said, explore the creation of indoor recreational facility to promote year-round visitors to the downtown area. So that was kind of a thought that had come up during the village's plan. And next slide. Any idea what the orange screen is?
I have no idea.
That's all right. Again, from the village's plan, this was under goal 3.7 under the village's master plan, was create more indoor activities so Frankfurt residents and visitors of all ages could have something to do in all seasons. Opportunities include exploring a new aquatic center and/or a community cultural center. What I want to say about this possibility for Borg Warner is it's so much more than a fitness center. 225,000 square feet of space. To give you an idea, the Oaks in Mokina, under roof, all of their space is 80,000 square feet. The Sportsplex that's operated by the Village of Orland Park on the west side of Orland Park is 100,000 square feet. The Benton Housing Center in Tinley Park is 105,000 square feet. This is more than double any of those facilities. Next slide. The renderings that you have here before on all the upcoming slides are just that. They're renderings of possibilities. We worked with an architectural firm that had worked on the community center that we had proposed or considered in 2016. And these renderings came from ideas from what the feedback was in the master plan about an aquatic facility, what kind of hypothetically could fit in Borg Warner. And again, these are not necessarily set in stone by any means because there are no dollars attached to these images. But given the expansive space, just about anything is possible under the roof. To give you an idea, here's another aerial image of Borg Warner. Oh, actually, can you take that up to the top, Steve?
Sorry.
In this
I thought
instance.
maybe the back.
There we go. So Borg Warner is 3 components of the building. The blue area, just the blue area alone, which is the far west side closest to the Frankfurt Park District Maintenance Garage on Locust Street, is 100,000 square feet. The ceilings are just under 25 feet in height. The middle expansive space, I kind of will call it the low bay area, the center section of the building, has 15-foot ceilings. And in the far east end, closest to the residential area on Maple, is currently occupied as office space. They have existing conference rooms, lab space, staff offices and things of that nature. But the space is very expansive. But what I think this image shows is the relationship to Main Park. So we have all this existing outdoor space, and the opportunity to have intertwining walking paths for people to be able to utilize both spaces as one, I think is very relevant when you can see this image. I think it's also worth noting that Borg Warner is currently used for a number of community events. If any of you enjoy the Fall Fest parade, which we hope to again this year, that parade is staged at Borg Warner, and it's really instrumental in having that event happen. The area is utilized for the July 4th fireworks viewing, and in addition, during not baseball games, but during our run, it's utilized for parking and access during our 5K run that's held in the summer. So Borg Warner has already been utilized for a number of community areas. This is a rendering of possibility what the building could include. This is a corridor that could be along the front of the building, and you can see the people looking into gymnasium space. The renderings we have for the kind of hypothetical drawing we have now have 4 gymnasium spaces inside the building. Again, similar view, you can see the walking track and the gathering. Again, what I stress is this building is so much more than a gym space or a turf space, is it's a community gathering space. What we miss here is with the facility we're in now at the Founder Center, we have a number of programs going on at multiple times, but when people are done, they just leave. Often we'll see them in the winter gathering in the parking lot because then there's another group that comes in. But what this would have a senior drop-in center where might be couches and a coffee pot with people who, after their fitness class, could have that opportunity to socialize and gather. This is an example of a space that could be put under the 15-foot ceilings. You'll see the rooms at the back of the image are fitness rooms, all-purpose rooms for whether it be dance studios, yoga classes, spin classes, and turf space, so you can do independent workouts or training in the area. Another image of the turf space, you can see the fitness rooms in the back with the track surrounding the area of the, we'll call them the high and low bay area. If the Park District acquired the Borg Warner property, again, people want to know what we're going to do with it. The goal would be to renovate and create recreational space, design a campus next to Main Park that's all-inclusive to all, and consolidate existing recreation facilities. So the question would be is, would we leave Founder Center? The building that we're in today was constructed in 3 phases as far back to 1940. And now, although we've made very good use of it, we have a lot of deferred maintenance. There are a number of areas that need roofs replaced, HVAC. We're looking at right now $600,000 in projects that need to be done here just to protect what's under the roof. We've kind of been holding off on them, trying to figure out, A, if we could get a grant to do some of that work, but B, is are we staying here? Will we be ever going somewhere else in the near future? So how do we not invest money if we might be leaving? If the referendum passes, the Park District would engage in community discussions. Again, I would remind everyone, this is a non-binding referendum. So a vote for yes for this referendum would not increase property taxes, but it would create an opportunity for us to look further. And if we did purchase it, it could only be done through a binding referendum. The process to do so would be really engaging the community. I know some people were involved when we made a consideration in 2015, but task force would be formed in all areas to represent all areas of the community so that if we design this building that it's for everyone and not just one isolated group, but bringing the community together and trying to have everybody have feedback about the facility. Here's another image. This is a rendering of the gymnasium space. They have 2 gymnasiums going north to south, two in this area and 2 on the backside, again with the walking track around the perimeter of the building. Another another image of a gymnasium area. More gyms, but what you could see in the background of that one, Stacy, if you could go back a slide, is a swimming pool. One thing that has been brought up on many occasions is aquatic facilities. There really isn't any here in the Lincoln Way corridor. Orland Park, Tinley Park, those are the next closest pools. Yes, there is a pool at Prestwick. It's a membership-only pool, and a number of residents have pools in their backyard. People have requested an outdoor pool. I have managed aquatic facilities over my professional career, and what I think aquatic facilities bring to a community are, I'll say, kind of threefold. One is a sense of community. When you have a backyard pool, you may have your neighbor over or your kids may have their friends over, but you don't see everybody. So what a community pool often brings is an opportunity for people to come together. Secondly, swim lessons. Swimming is such an important life skill. There are opportunities in small areas to do that in town, but I think swimming proposes an opportunity for people to have that important life skill. And swimming is a great fitness activity for those who can't maybe participate in other facilities. I know our Lincoln Way Special Rec program is often looking for pool space. So again, this is something that is certainly lacking in this area and something that is possible here from an indoor standpoint and an outdoor standpoint. Some people using the fitness space. Some turf space with kids playing indoor soccer. Pickleball. I know Phil from Operation Playground is here. He's our local pickleball advocate. We have new pickleball courts outdoors, but sadly we live in the Midwest, so we can't play all year round. So gymnasium space is great for pickleball. Drop-in space, so you see people playing billiards. This is something that could be in the senior or teen area. When we think of a community space, I'm hoping that it will be multi-generational. So maybe during the day it's used by one group and in the evening it's used by another, but most importantly it's used by the community. An indoor play space. So we have a preschool program that's currently housed at the Pent facility, and the intention would be to bring that program over to the Borg Warner property. You can see often our preschoolers want to gather afterwards, so it'd be an opportunity for indoor play again during those months that here in the Midwest we can't get outdoors. And probably the most important part of the process here is the financial overview. So I know many of you know where your taxes go, but they say typically 85% of Americans escrow their property taxes. And what you know is that you pay high taxes. And I won't be dismissive, our board is not dismissive of that either. We understand that Frankfurt people and people in Illinois pay high taxes. But I wanted to just let people know that there's some important things. We are not part of the village of Frankfurt. Often people say, well, I've called Mayor Holland and I told him I wanted an indoor pool. And Mayor Holland cares very important about what pool you want. But he is usually not in the business of recreation. He would say, call the Park District. And people said, well, I called the mayor. We are a separate taxing body and governed and supervised by our elected officials. So we are separate from the village. We don't receive any money from them. We represent a very small part of your tax bill, just lower than the Forest Preserve and Library, but the Park District's at a 2.66% of your tax bill. Next slide, please. This is just what a typical bill would look like. So if you had a $400,000 home in Frankfurt, this would how your tax bill might lay out, again, given the value of your property. But the average Frankfurt resident who has a $400,000 home is paying to the Frankfurt Park District, I know it by heart, but I don't want to speak, $291. So that varies. We are a small piece of the pie, but again, I don't want to minimize that $300 is a lot of money. Next one, please. Often we hear questions here at the Park District. They'll say, well, I grew up in Homewood and we had 2 public pools, or I lived in Tinley Park and they have a pool. Well, the reason they may have those things are either one, they passed a binding referendum to build a specific project, but many of them collect more money on an annual basis. So just to give you an idea and a comparison, in the southwest suburbs, we have the lowest Park District property tax rate at 0.228, and going all the way up to Homewood Flossmoor, which is 0.887. So there's a grave difference. There's a lot of things that go into the calculation of how much money we get, but your tax rate is is how it really all comes to be had. The only way the tax rate is increased is through a referendum at a tax rate increase. That's not what we're discussing today, but through this process, we've had a number of residents inquire, well, how do we get you more money? Well, certainly you could donate, but that's not what we're asking you to do. It's really through a tax rate or a bond referendum issue. From the Park District's budget standpoint, we collect $1.8 million and change in our property taxes, and they're in 3 different areas. Most of it is what we call our corporate or general fund. We have some bonds and interest money, which represents 6% of the tax rate, and 18% is our special recreation or handicap fund is how it might read on your tax bill. So that is how it breaks down, and we collect $1.8 million on an annual basis through property taxes. Another important question that most people want to know tonight, well, what would this referendum cost? So nothing if you vote yes today, or nothing if you vote no at the polling. But what this would happen is, so if we go next year and we explore this process and we say, okay, we chose the number $20 million because honestly that is our ability, our bonding ability to do, is all we can borrow is about 20 million, give or change with the interest rates and the current EAV and CPI that go on. But if we borrowed $20 million to purchase Borg Warner and to renovate the property for a home that's $400,000, it would be an annual increase of $160. Now, that is with current interest rates, so interest rates are at an all-time low. So certainly as the interest rates fluctuate, it could be $181, lots of ways to structure debt. But on average, for a $400,000 home, it would be a $161 increase if we borrowed $20 million to purchase and renovate Borg Warner. Again, why Borg Warner and why now? If the Park District isn't there, there could be a new industrial tenant. There is the very possibility that the property could sit vacant for a number of years. And then there's the possibility that it could be purchased and rezoned and possibly constructed with houses. Ultimately, the village is the zoning authority and they control the aspects of how the property could be rezoned. The property is for sale. The asking price is approximately between $7.5 to $8 million. The Park District has had ongoing discussions with Borg Warner. One of the questions we've been asked is, have we done an environmental study or is anyone doing one? Certainly that's a concern of the Park Districts. Borg Warner is in the process of doing a phase 1 environmental review. They anticipated it would be back this week. I haven't heard from them, but that is certainly a very concern of ours, as well as Borg Warner. And they, in our dialogues with them, they have expressed that if they did find something of concern, that their intentions would be to clean it if they did find something, whether they sold it to the Park District or to another property owner. At this point, I would entertain questions. I will go through, if you are online, if you could type your questions in the chat, and our staff will be happy to read them as they come through. If you're here in the room and you have a question, we would welcome you to go to the microphone either with a comment or a question. Stacy, do you have any questions online? One of the questions we've seen through some of the social media is people have asked us why we did just say use Lincoln Way North. At one time there was consideration with the state to purchase Lincoln Way North, I do believe that that opportunity has fallen through. I don't think the property was large enough, but I will also say that Lincoln Way North is not in the Frankfurt Park District area, but Borg Warner is intended to be much more than what is at Lincoln Way North as far as the fitness center and track. We're talking about relocating our programming space, our preschool, so it's much different, than just saying to use that. So for a fitness center, I mean, honestly, Borg Warner, if we purchase and renovate it, may not have a fitness center. It will really be up to the residents, and really that's what I want to convey. It's really what the community wants, and so we hope that you'll go to the polls and cast a vote and let us know your feedback. I see we have someone at the mic. If you could just tell us your name and ask us your question. It should be on.
Hello, can you hear me? I don't think you can hear me or not. My name is Kurt Nissen. I live at 49 Elwood Street here in Frankfurt. Do you have, I don't know if you have an exact figure, but of the residents of Frankfurt, young and old, how many of them actually participate in Frankfurt Park District activities? Whether it be classrooms in here or sporting events like soccer? Do we, because what I'm thinking is the taxpayers would pay for this, and how many people would ultimately be using it?
Sure, reasonable question.
I mean, the Frankfurt, I think our population is pushing right around 20,000 residents.
Correct?
And if only 1,000 people used it, I was just wondering, I don't expect you to come up with exact,
Sure. All 20,000. No, I don't know the answer to that question. Through our surveys, we did get, through our master plan, we do have some feedback from, people who say this, when we did our random sampling for our master plan, people did respond if they use it or don't use it at all. And when you say the park district, it's so much more than this building, because it's kind of a twofold question. I think people use our parks and maybe forget that that's the park district because they enjoy long walks and they walked through Commissioner's Park to use the walking path. So I don't have a number for that. I do think that we have a good usage as far as, from the age groups that we touch, because we have a lot of senior all the way down to our preschool age programming. And I think this building has the potential to create increased use for people who maybe aren't using us now, because they go to another facility. In our survey, we did find that a number of people go to the Oaks and Mokina because we don't have that service. Certainly there are fitness facilities in town. There isn't another walking track in town. And during COVID, and as we came out of COVID in the fall, with Lincoln Way, the Lincoln Way school access has really been cut off. And the malls are either weren't open or people didn't feel safe or didn't want to travel that far. Consistently, people are looking for spaces to have indoor walking. To kind of touch on the Lincoln Way use, when the Lincoln Way process, when the schools were expanded, I was not here, but one of the things they sold that referendum was community use. Well, what I will say is community use for the schools, we're living in a different world. Between school shootings, the access has been cut off. So, when they built those with the idea that people would have access to the swimming pool and the fitness center and the walking track pre-COVID and school incidents. So I know people have expressed some frustration about not having access to the facilities that were promised to be available. Things have changed, and I don't think that the school limited that use because of any reason other than they just want to make sure that they have a safe environment for their students.
Okay.
Stacy, do you have any online questions? Well, at least you ask one and then we'll go to the gentleman here.
Okay, sounds great. One Zoom question was, did the other property that was purchased previously get sold? The one that is on Route 45 near Laraway Road?
The property on LaGrange and Laraway that was purchased in 2013, Tom?
Yes.
I think, with the intentions of constructing a community center, has not been sold. It has been for sale. Park districts, our land is our asset. So in order to sell any parcel over 3 acres, we have to go to a referendum. So for those of you who vote regularly, you might remember, I think 3 years ago, it was on the ballot and the voters did support the opportunity to sell that. However, we did have some interested parties but did not formulate a sale. We have had some interested parties as of recently, so the intention would be if we did a program like Borg Warner, the intention would be to continue to sell that property. Good evening.
Evening. Hi, my name is Mike Talaga. Just a question on a couple of things. You mentioned that the bond rate could be as much as up to $20 million. That would be the limit. You mentioned that the purchase price would be $8 million. Are you going anticipating doing 12 million of renovations, or is that 20 million just the top figure?
The 20 million is a top figure. I don't want to pay 7 million for the building. I would love to negotiate a much lower price. We've had some ongoing discussions with Borg Warner. We've even asked them to donate it. They haven't offered yet, but we did ask. But the 20 million is just a cap, so to kind of give people the kind of the top of what that would affect their property taxes.
And what amount would be anticipated for renovations at this point to make it appear as the,
Rendering show.
yeah.
We did not spend the dollars to do that. So that's the part that comes after this. If there is support to move forward, we would work with an architectural firm in talking to the community and getting feedback to put that feedback to construction dollars into a business plan.
And how old is the building itself?
Ooh.
I think it was built in '58, actually, the first part of it.
I'd say it has a couple phases, a lot
But
like
there's-
this
there's
building.
3 phases of that also.
Yeah, I think 60 years in total, so. They have done asbestos removal, so all of their pipes that were insulated with asbestos have been removed. They have done work on their roofs. They have maintained the areas, again, to a different standard than we'd be using them because it is an industrial property, but they have spent some dollars. They've upgraded their fire suppression system and things of that nature.
And you anticipate not doing maintenance here for major maintenance that needs to be done here, but over there, would there be major, like, air conditioning and heating and windows?
Well, everything, I mean, yes, I mean, you can see through some of those renderings, I mean, the building probably wouldn't look like it does today, right? Currently, there's no view into the building. So, I mean, you know, I wouldn't say the building would be deconstructed, but things would have to happen. So it's a factory, so there's support beams a lot like there are in here in parts of the building. Some of them would have to come out to allow for that wide open, expansive space. So, and again, the heating and air conditioning, the evaluation of that, you know, I believe they have ventilation, but parts of the building aren't insulated because it's a factory and the operation keeps the building warm enough. So there's certainly lots of those renovations that would need to be done.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lisa, do you have a question? No. Any other questions? And we're happy to be here as you think of those. The key that I want to suggest tonight is that this building is about community, and it's really up to the residents to go to the polls and vote and let us know how your interest in or not to move this project forward. Yes, sir.
My name is Joseph Toledo. I've been in Frankfurt since '74. I probably will not support this referendum. I do not like paying for somebody else's toys. I probably won't use anything that you showed on there. And as far as walking paths, I like outdoors. I also would prefer to do some biking rather than walking anyplace. And I think it's just simply another expense, and although you claim that it is different than the school district, but my pocketbook says it's all the same doggone thing. And I've got this albatross on Harlem and Walmer Road that needs to go. My thought was that it eventually could be used for something else. Now, there was thoughts about colleges, St. Francis, Joliet. I would also like to see this thing turned into a hospital instead. But at the same time, I can't see spending $7.2 million on just a facility, and then you're gonna have to either tear it down, build it up, furnish it, and then tax it forever. And I think that there's just a small amount of the community that's gonna be using it. Basketball, volleyball, baseball. We got enough baseball courts in this county or in this district to choke anybody. There's at least 20 of them I can think of. So I probably will vote no.
Thank you for your feedback. Tom, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just going to say about.
In the microphone, please.
I was just going to say the amount of monies that we bring in on recreation is, about $1.5 million. So the recreation, if we're bringing $1.5 million of what we have now, if we had another facility that would offer much more than what we have, I think that recreation dollars would increase tremendously. Plus there'd be other players, within the community. I think that it's going to serve not just the park district. You're going to have other, civic organizations and other organizations that are going to be utilizing the space too. So it's not just the park district that's gonna be utilizing the space, you're gonna have other entities that are gonna be involved.
Good point, Tom. I do thank you for your feedback, and certainly what I would say here in the Midwest is when people are playing sports, we know families that are here in town and they take their dollars to the Bodome in Lamont, and they're going to Indiana to practice sports because nowadays people play sports year round. So they're taking those dollars outside Frankfurt to other facilities. I do value that you don't think you're going to use this facility. Many of us will never use an ambulance. Many of us will never have a fire truck come put out the fire at our house, but you hope they're there when you need them and you're still paying for them. But Mr. Bars made a point that, you know, this building being so expansive, there's opportunities to work with other community organizations, whether they be a tenant or are a partner. You know, many fitness centers and health facilities are often partnered with a medical facility, so there's cardiac rehab or fitness of that nature. There would be an opportunity to maybe work with other civic organizations such as the Arts Foundation, the Preservation Organization, possibly the Chamber or the Kids Museum. Again, this is an expansive space and it's so much more than just a fitness center and a walking track. It's an opportunity for community organizations to come together and be under one roof. And so if we have other nonprofits, we have the opportunity to have them as tenants and help, again, pay down some of the, you know, the operating costs because the space is so large. So, yes, sir.
My name is Zach Strupek. I grew up in Frankfurt. I used to play soccer at the main park until the football team picked us out. I worked for Frankfurt Boys Baseball and maintained all the baseball fields. I probably raced and striped the Borg Warner field hundreds of times over the years that I worked there. And I gotta say that growing up in Frankfurt, I definitely noticed that Tinley Park, Orland Park, New Lenox, all had these facilities that were incredible. They got classroom space, they got exercise space, everything. New Lenox or Tinley Park has a soccer pitch, football pitch, excellently kept baseball fields. And I actually have a team that spends $1,200 a year to play soccer in Tinley Park because there's nothing in Frankfurt that we can utilize. The school, I know Lincoln Way East has limited access to the facilities, and even if we do get access as a community, oftentimes we have to work around or surrender time to the school activities, which is fine. That's what the school's there. School's there for the students. So I think that having a facility like this presents an opportunity for Frankfurt to not only provide something excellent for its residents, but also create some sort of attraction for people outside of Frankfurt to come and spend their money in Frankfurt. Because I know I wouldn't be going to Tinley Park to play soccer if I could stay in Frankfurt and do it. And so I, along with my parents, my mom runs a fitness class out of this center when it's available. We'll be supporting this referendum because it's at least worth looking into the options. And maybe if the price tag is too high in the future, we say no, but I think at this stage, it's at least worth an investigation.
Thank you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I have more questions.
You're not live.
Would there be additional-
Your microphone's not on.
Sorry.
Would there be additional fees for Frankfurt residents to use the facilities?
Yes, there would. The hope would be that if there was common spaces like the walking track or a senior drop-in facility or teen center, that those would be at no cost. But what I would use the word enterprise fund when you have a fitness center or turf space or a aquatic facility, people would pay the cost to operate those facilities and those dollars would be allocated back to those facilities. So there would be user fees, but make it clear that the residents would have user fees that would be consistently lower than if there was an opportunity for a non-resident to use the facility. So those who have funded the property would have first opportunity for use, as well as lower fees than if somebody else. And there would certainly be intentions to have free days. Many park districts that have larger facilities have sampling days or one day a month when people can come in and have that opportunity to utilize the facilities.
Okay, what is the estimated timeline to acquire the property and complete the renovations? When would the facility be expected to open?
Great, good question. So if there was support after this April 6th election, the Park District Board will make a decision on whether or not to move forward. If that opportunity proceeds, we would spend the next from April to the first opportunity to ask voters for a binding referendum would be March of 2022. If not in March, November of 2022. If it passed in either one of those elections, the first time you would see a tax increase would be the following year in 2023. And then I suspect as part of this process, we would have architectural drawings. So moderately quickly after if election was passed, construction would go out to bid, and the process could take anywhere from 18 to 24 months, again, depending on what the projects are. Portions of the building might be open one area before another, but again, that's way down the roads and kind of a hypothetical, but that's kind of an estimated timeline.
What was Borg Warner as an ongoing business contributing in property taxes?
Good question. $90,000. And those $90,000 are split amongst your school district and all the other taxing bodies. So that would be, that if the park district is able to purchase the property, that would be a deduction from the property taxes that all the districts get.
One more
Or is it-
question.
okay, yep, go ahead.
Okay. Who will be responsible for the remediation of the site after the phase 1 and probably phase 2 are completed?
Well, really the goal for the park district would not be to pay for any of it. So in the ongoing, very brief conversations we've had with Borg Warner, they expressed that they were hopeful to find nothing, but that they felt that it would be important as them as a corporate entity to monitor and manage that aspect of any cleanup that would be needed. Certainly, we wouldn't want to do it because it would add to any cost, and our goal is to purchase the property at the lowest possible cost and renovate it. So I see we have another question in person. You just tap the mic to see if it's on. Can you slide the lever down? I know, God,
It's a black one.
you can even pull it out if you would. Oh, there we go.
I'm John Riley. I live in Frankfurt. I'm thrilled to see this young person come forward to support this. I think this would be a phenomenal addition to Frankfurt. What's going to happen in 5 years if we don't buy it and take it over is you're going to see condos, homes, or even another industrial piece of property there. We're going to look back and say, why did we take this over? I think it'd be great for us. I find it interesting in the village's questionnaire that people responded they wanted indoor rec space, they wanted an indoor pool, outdoor pool. Many people don't know that Prairie Park is a village park, not a Frankfurt Park District park. Is there any possibility that Frankfurt, because there are some trustees here, and I know many communities do this in the Chicago area, that the village of Frankfurt would be willing to partnership with the Frankfurt Park District to make this happen?
Well,
Has there been any discussions, I guess, with the village?
There have been discussions. The village has said, the current administration has said that they're not interested in being a landlord. Borg Warner asked them if they wanted to purchase it and hold it till we could purchase it, and the current administration said they didn't think that that was an interest. We have inquired about a partnership, and we'd be willing to partner with anybody if that makes sense. Certainly a nonprofit or taxing body makes it easier from a standpoint, but I don't want to put any of the trustees on the spot, but it has been an ongoing discussion that we've had with the village.
Thank you.
I think the election will be important to kind of lead any further discussions. Lisa, do you have any other questions?
Just comment.
Well, why don't you go ahead and read some of your comments? I think the comments are, we don't want to just read the questions that are online, but certainly share the comments if you would. And then we'll let her read the comments, and then we'll go to you, sir.
Okay, I'm just going to start from the beginning. It says, yes, multi-generational, important. It's not just about young people. I feel this is a great opportunity to explore due to location. As I say, location, location, location. We couldn't ask for a better location. Yes, you need to sell that property on Laraway and 45. It doesn't make sense to still own that property and then buy Borg Warner. I think as giving the right to move forward, it's just giving the Park District the opportunity to move forward to the next step. Much like if you sign a petition to allow someone to be listed on the ballot, you're not endorsing or voting for the candidate, you're just giving them the opportunity to run for the election.
Thank you, Lisa. The gentleman at the microphone?
Hi, my name's Mike Westman. Been a resident here in Frankfurt for over 20 years. Just a quick comment on what this gentleman offered. I don't know anybody that has chosen not to move to Frankfurt because their facilities or park district programs are insufficient or inadequate. Actually, I think they're pretty stellar and really are more an attraction than deferment. So I just wanted to say that what everybody's been doing to date is really commendable and appreciated by the general population here in Frankfurt. I have some specific questions
Sure.
really about the non-binding referendum. I mean, if we're going to go ahead and look at things, non-binding, money's going to be spent. Fair to say, when you go through a non-binding evaluation of this program,
Well-
you'll spend architectural fees, you'll spend legal fees, you'll spend.
Through the binding, we would. So that this current process, the non-binding, not to say we haven't spent any dollars, because we all work here and our time costs money. We did a mailing to residents that cost money, but the architectural drawings that have currently been provided have been at no cost. But
Really?
Yeah. So they think it's that good of an idea. I've had another architect also offer to do
Do you
drawings.
have a couple architects that the park district has worked with, or just one?
Well, these folks worked on the facility in 2015-16, and I want to kind of say why we did non-binding. So as we kind of knew Borg Warner was going to close, we didn't really know they were going to put it up for sale when they did. You know, we didn't know if it'd be a year or 3 years. And right before December, right before the holidays, I've been kind of staying in touch with them, and I reached out and I said, hey, you know, we'd love to get inside the building, we'd love to see it. And they said, sure, come on over in 3 days. And by the way, we're going to list the property. We have a listing agent. We're going to list it after the first of the year. We're like, oh, all right. Well, we did not feel responsible to have a binding referendum when we have so many unanswered questions. So we thought the non-binding was the best way to ask residents a formal question with, you know, to go to that next step, because we don't know a lot of the answers to the questions. So that is why we selected a non-binding opposed to a binding. And we would spend money during the binding process. The architects wouldn't do it for free. That would be when the real work would start, to try to put a cost associated with all of the wish lists, working with task force, establishing different strategies, and that would cost money. And that's kind of why we're asking for the feedback in the election.
So you're saying the non-binding will cost the taxpayers nothing?
No, I said we did a postage, we did a mailing,
Yeah, I mean, that's,
staff time,
Right.
but outside of that, and the commissioners,
Probably a little bit of legal, a little bit of.
a few legal questions to make sure
Very,
that
very
we,
little.
yeah.
Very
Under,
small amount of money.
under $3,000.
okay.
I do appreciate your positive comments, the staff, and our many instructors that work here make that happen.
About topics here, I think it's a big step, it's a significant amount of money. It
Yes.
truly is, and it affects every taxpayer here in Frankfurt. You know, and to Joe's point here about Lincoln Way and the $225 million spent that every taxpayer got stuck with.
Yes.
Because there's some games going on with numbers, is that boom is not gone.
Nope.
You know, and it rubs a lot of people the wrong way and makes everybody very tentative about any kind of major step to make an investment.
Yes, I understand.
So,
And that's why in 2016, that had just happened, if you recall. It was a very fresh wound when we were ready to move forward with that process on Laraway Road. And the board listened. When people said, you know, this is not the time, we did not move forward with it. So I do think that, you know, when we talk about the schools here, to your point about people moving or not moving here for recreation, people move here because of the schools. There's no doubt about it. And people are paying for quality schools. I believe it was in 2000, that there was a referendum for the grade school district that doubled their tax rate. So right now, the grade school district is sitting on $30 million, and they're gonna renovate Chelsea School without asking anybody, because they have a very high tax rate and have those monies. I wish that I had $5 million in the bank to be able to purchase a piece of property or renovate something, but our tax rate is so low that it just doesn't align that way. We were doing an assessment of all the park districts in the community, you know, neighboring park districts, and we're the only one in 2019 that had over $1 million in recreation revenue because of the programming that the staff do and the volume they do. And I can only think of what we could do is if we had more improved facilities and more opportunities for the residents. But I very much value your feedback.
I'll tell you, it's noticed with the small businesses throughout the area, with gymnastics, local here on Laraway, and doing things outside with vendors and other businesses with the park district. That doesn't go unheeded or unnoticed. I mean, that is a kind of collaborative effort to bring resources to a community that is really stellar.
I couldn't agree more. Our local businesses, our corporate businesses in town, our small businesses are great partners for all of our special events and serving us on our needs and for our services. And it's the best thing is collaborative efforts, partnerships.
So the gyms are still our friends, okay?
Yes, the fitness, like I said, this building is so much more than a fitness center.
Thank you very much. I just had a comment on one of the comments that came in about the Laraway Road property. Is we had spoken with Borg Warner in regards to them possibly using that in a trade situation where it be, utilized towards the purchase of the property. And there wasn't any, is it manufacturing? No, it's commercial. Well, there was no pushback on that, so that's a possibility. So, that's a big dollar amount that would go towards the down payment on the Borg Warner and relieve us of some property over here. So that is on the table also.
We have a question at the microphone.
Hi, my name's Laura Tookars. I live right down here in Locust Street, so I'm actually fairly new. Moved here from Mokina, was a Mokina resident for several years, built a house over there. It actually was through the Oaks entire process, so I know it fairly well. I have one comment and a couple of questions. The first comment is the Oaks whole process was seemingly unmanaged or not managed very well in terms of what was going to happen for taxes and in terms of where the money was going, and ended up with like 800 grand in bonds that they're still seeking in order to just get that building to actually run itself. So my questions are, one, is there any discussion on splitting the land for Borg Warner between using the land that we do already for baseball fields that we know we need, and potentially selling or splitting the land for somebody else to buy the actual building itself? And the second question is there a part of the $20 million referendum, does that include keeping the lights on over X amount of years? Because clearly a building that size would take a lot of money just to run, not just from an operational standpoint, but organizational from staffing and things like that. So those are my two questions.
Okay. Thank you. To answer your question about keeping the lights on, the dollars would come from the operating costs either built into the membership fees, and that process would be established through this next phase. So the idea would be is to do a business model to see, okay, we need X number of members for if there is a fitness center or if there is an aquatic facility, what the cost is, what the target number of memberships are to pay for those costs. Park districts often use the term enterprise fund so that those funds are self-sustaining. So those areas, so portions of the building could be an enterprise fund, and then what I would call the programming space that would replace what we have here and at the Pent building would operate out of the operating fund of the taxes we collect. Your question, I'm going back to the previous question. Splitting the land. We certainly want to try to retain that baseball field. I will tell you that the Park District, we did at Borg Warner said they might be open to splitting the parcel into separate pins. I don't know that we have the dollars on hand to purchase that right now anyway. So even if they sold us at the value of the land to purchase just the ball field, unless they greatly reduced it, we don't have the money to do that likely also.
Yeah, and so follow-up question, if the referendum goes through just to explore, will there be options in terms of splitting the land versus using the whole land? Like, will there be like a minimal amount of money being spent versus like what we could go like visionary? Or is it just like a straight up, the whole land is ours, here's what we're gonna do with it? Or will there be like options?
Well, some of that will be up to the village. So let's hypothetically, we pass a referendum in March of 2022, and we say, well, it's interesting, could we have houses on this side of the street to pay for some of the costs of purchase the land? Are the residents open for that, maybe the northeast corner to build 8 houses? Well, that would not be only our sole decision, we would have to get permission through rezoning. So, I think anything's possible. The parcel as a whole, I think Borg Warner's intentions are to sell it as a whole. I think they might be open to extracting the baseball field. The question is depending on what they're asking for, could we afford to purchase it? I don't really know the answer to that question, but I think anything's a possibility, certainly, as that's going to be the whole process. So when we start working with an architectural firm a little bit further, if we don't need space, there certainly is a small creek in part of the water, in part of the property, but is there a way to mitigate things so that maybe portions could be additional houses and things of that nature? I think it's all a possibility.
Thank you.
I would also worth noting that maybe nobody's ever seen, there's an expansive amount of space behind the building. Borg Warner has some, they look like recycle bins or structures behind there. I mean, it is really an expansive space behind the building where there's an opportunity for outdoor fitness in addition to behind the building as much as there is on the front end. So, Lisa, do you have any more online questions?
I do not.
You know? Phil?
Hi, Phil Simmons. I just had a couple comments. One is, Jan, you did an outstanding job tonight answering questions. I appreciate how prepared you are.
Thank you. It's worth noting Phil serves as the president of the Parks Foundation, so, and a previous commissioner, so Phil and I know each other pretty well. I like transparency.
It's a lot of work. It's a lot of homework. My opinion on this thing is that, and I've been in Frankfurt for 25 years or so, and watched this town when I moved here. It was a really pretty sleepy little village, a very small village, really not resembling much of what it is today. It's grown immensely and in so many good ways. It's business and parks and everything else, the schools are just phenomenal. So now it's sort of like, I don't know, it seems to me it's the showplace of the south suburbs. And if you're looking for a place, serious place to live where you want outstanding schools, safe neighborhoods, just a wonderful community to work in, all kinds of things to do. I mean, when you look around, this town is just exceptional. The Park District is also extremely good. But it's exceptional in the sense that when you look at that pie chart, and you look at the dollars that are raised from taxes here, it always amazed me when I would do my taxes and see the sliver that comes out for the Park District, say, versus the public library. So, this is my personal opinion. So I think my image of the library is the public library, and maybe a bookmobile and some other programs that they have going on. And then I think, okay, they get X amount of dollars, and just for slightly different amount of dollars, you've got the whole Park District, and I think, 20-some fields and
265 acres.
this building, all the programs, all the staff, constantly doing things for the same amount of money. Does this make any sense at all? I mean, it's just absolutely amazing how much gets done within the Frankfurt Park District on the limited amount of revenues that they get. And the way to compare that is like, okay, think of your park district and all the programs go on, all the parks have to be maintained, all the equipment has to be bought, all the lawnmowers, all the trucks, all the other stuff. And then think of the library. They're the same dollars. Actually, the library gets more dollars.
I just say the library serves Frankfurt and Frankfurt Square, so they collect, I think, 500,000 more.
And buses, and they're wonderful. They're great. They're a great library. But it just doesn't make sense. So going forward, as this community builds out, we're expanding. We're going to expand again. We're going to expand again. We have plenty of room to do it. We've got the people that are moving in. They're high quality people, and homes are wonderful homes. This park district is not going to, on a long-term basis, sustain that growth. It has to plan to absorb it 10 years from now, 20 years from now, and the capital investments to do that is what we're looking at right now. And if this goes away, what's the alternative? Where would you replace? This isn't going to work 20 years from now. You know that. Is this building going to work for a population of 25 or 30,000 people in this town 20 years from now? No. So something's going to have to come. So it seems to me that you've got a real unique opportunity to purchase land right in the heart of town that has access to everybody. It's adjacent to an existing park, which gives that all kinds of flexibility. And it's accessible to the Old Plank Trail, which I think is very important for children in our community to get to recreational facilities on their bicycles safely. And I think all those things really speak for this. So I can't think of a really good reason why not to at least explore this idea, at least look at it. You have to say yes to this referendum for them to proceed. and get the hard numbers and get all the facts and answer more questions and everything else. To say, no, don't proceed, just forget the whole idea, I can't understand why that makes any sense at all. I just don't understand how that makes any sense. So I would support this idea. I would support everybody coming out and really looking hard at it, and as the details grow and as their research goes on, and think of the future of this community and what its needs are going to be. And I think you have to agree that this is a unique opportunity. That's all I have to say. I think it's a great opportunity for us.
Thank you, Phil.
Can I ask an online question real quick?
Sure.
Okay. It's a little long. Does it seem feasible to pay $7.5 million to purchase a building you can't currently use, rather than buying a vacant piece of property for less than $500,000 and using the extra money to fix what you have or put it towards the new building?
Can you read that one more time?
Does it seem feasible to pay $7.5 million to purchase a new building you can't currently use, rather than buying a vacant piece of property for less than $500,000 and using the extra money to fix what you have or put it towards the new building?
Good question. I will tell you that if we have the opportunity to purchase Borg Warner, I don't have any intentions of paying $7.5 million for the property. And we've made that clear to Borg Warner. We would want it at a much lower price. And again, we've asked them if they would consider a charitable contribution for part of the building and or land. So I hope not that wouldn't be our intentions. As far as owning vacant land, we have a corner of vacant land. We can't, without a referendum, can't construct anything on the 11 acres we owned at LaGrange and Laraway. We did finance the opportunity to purchase that land. So yes, I understand they're asking if we could buy something cheaper, we'd have more money to renovate it. But the corner of LaGrange and Laraway needs sewer connections, it needs utility connections. So sometimes vacant land doesn't have the same thing. So again, I'm not an architect. I've talked to two. I've talked to someone who would say, well, sometimes it's cheaper to tear down than to rebuild. But we could probably use a third of the building with very minimal recreation or renovations. The office space has some great classroom space, similar to what we have here, but larger. They have conference rooms that, we don't have a conference room. I know we're here tonight and spread out, but we use a small classroom upstairs for our boardrooms. It's pretty rudimentary. Not that that's not a problem, we make the best of it, but there are some spaces we currently probably could use with a little bit of paint and maybe a redo of the doorway and things of that nature. But good question, but again, depending on the vacant property, it may not always be cheaper, but certainly that's part of the exploration process, is to determine if makes sense to renovate the building rather than do exactly maybe what they're suggesting. So that would be part of the next phase. Hi.
Yeah, my name's John Savy, and you can see my house from here. I support a yes vote, like the gentleman said before me. We don't have anything to lose, right? But my question.
I'm going to lose sleep for the next 12 months.
Well,
if anybody, I have already lost sleep, but that's
maybe
my job.
Maybe either way you would lose sleep. But my question is who owns this building and the land it sits on?
You do. As a property tax owner of Frankfurt, we own this property, but we, as the Park District, is you, the residents of Frankfurt. Am I correct?
Correct.
So,
Because there's a lot of value.
and that would be something that would help pay down the opportunity to purchase Borg Warner.
Thank you.
Thank you for your feedback. Lisa, I'm thinking you have another question there.
I do have a few things. I just have one, I'm gonna read them in order, if that's
Sure.
okay. For the community, would you rather have another in-town factory rather than a community center? That's just a comment. One other question, you mentioned the extra tax amount would be $170 on a $400,000 assessment. How much percentage increase is that over the current rate?
So there's two, and anyone who wants to jump in, Lisa, you're a business manager, so I'm going to try to explain this. So the tax rate won't change. When you have, as a government entity, when we borrow money in a lump sum like the high school did, some would say irresponsibly, when you borrow a chunk of money, it is not part of your tax rate. It is a $20 million amount, and it is split amongst all of the property owners. So again, it's a calculation, it's not a tax rate increase. So the money that we collect, which is currently on a $400,000 home, less than $300,000, that amount stays the same. In order to change that, we would have to do a tax rate increase, which is a possibility. I'd be happy to have both. That would pay to keep the lights on a little better, but currently that's not our discussion. It is a one lump sum, and that might be 10 million, but we've used 20 million as the number, and it is split amongst everyone. So it's not a tax rate increase, it is just that amount. So it right now, again, with the current rates and at a $400,000 house, it's less than $200,000, less than $200. Do you think, did I capture that, Lisa?
It's like a bond rate is basically a bond that's for a period of time. And after that period of time, it falls off, where a tax rate will stay on forever.
And I did through social media, someone said, please don't lie to people after the 20, it's the term we're hypotheticating with this is 20 years. Someone said, please don't lie to people, it never goes away. Well, it goes back to the voters after the 20 years. Many park districts or government entities, when they borrow a lump sum in this nature, when they go back to the voters in 20 years, the voters have the right to extend it, and sometimes it's for a new project. So let's say we don't build out all of Borg Warner at once, and we come back in 10 or 15 years, if that, depending on the terms, we could ask for money to go to another phase. Because the space is so expansive, right now I couldn't tell you if we would build out all of the space. Certainly larger open spaces have a different cost structure than specialty spaces, but it is expansive. So we have a gentleman at the microphone.
Hi, Mark Baker. I live down the street in Oregon Street here. Are you aware of any grants that are available to finance public recreational centers like this? And second question, have you explored any private-public partnerships, for example, like the Advocate Hospital Group participating and sharing some of the cost?
Sure. So the state has often, sometimes through federal government money and sometimes through just state funding, has had projects. We actually applied for one for the Founder Center 2 years ago. It was called a park grant. And they are up to $2.5 million for projects just like this, brick and mortar to renovate and have spaces. So currently there isn't an open cycle, but often during times of crisis, like after the recession or after a pandemic, sometimes you see those programs come out. So we certainly would be looking at that process. And then we've seen some federal dollars through the crisis come down through the state. There were some opportunities during COVID if you had a shovel-ready project. So let's say we start this process, the voters say yes, and we're in the process of buying it, we may be able to apply for some federal dollars there's been some that have been handed out during this crisis to do just this. The second part of your question was partnerships. When we explored this opportunity in 2015-16, we talked to some of the local hospitals. We've already reached back out to some of them to talk about, often you'll see a cardiac rehab facility or health centers that maybe that function is under the hospital. So those would be possibilities, and we have started making those calls. But we've got a lot of things that are right here that we're kind of waiting until we hear at the election on April 6th. So, Lisa, do you have something online?
I'll read another question. Hypothetically, if this went through and we purchased Borg Warner, what is the vision for the Founder Center?
Again, I can't speak to that fully, but I think as I mentioned before, I think the hope would be to sell it. I can't speak to if we sold it, what they would do with it, but we would like to take the value that's here and invest that at Borg Warner.
Can I just make a comment that I would like you to maybe explain a little bit? I believe someone had asked about if there would be options. So when you do go to a binding, would there be options that maybe an A, B, or C that would be able to be talked about and voted on by the task force?
Task force or voters. So if we went to a binding, we could ask a number of different questions. Whether you ask for a tax rate or a bond issue or both or one or the other, but then you start splitting votes. So certainly the goal would be over the next 12 months to talk to our task force and through community surveys to find out what we think people are going to support before we put it on the ballot.
Guess that's it.
Commissioner Bars, Commissioner Rivoli, anything you'd like to say? I guess
Just thank you very much for coming out this evening.
Since we did do a mailing, and I have heard from a number of residents, and I very much value the residents that take the time to understand where their tax dollars are going and provide your feedback. Again, we work for the residents of Frankfurt, And we really mean that. You know, without tax dollars, we don't have jobs, but we really try to do the best we can with the dollars we have. So I just encourage people to go to the polls on April 6th, either early voting, mail-in voting, or come out on April 6th. I do understand it's the Tuesday after a holiday, but you know, we want to hear from people. So yourselves, if you have friends that feel the same way, in either way, please encourage them to come to the polls. This meeting is being recorded, and we're working with the wonderful village staff, and our goal is to turn this around and have it available online for people to view after this evening, because I can't think of anything else better to fall asleep to than me, but we very much appreciate your time. If you didn't sign in, if you could please do so, that would allow us to send any future correspondence to you if you are interested, and we'll stick around and answer any questions after the meeting. Oh, you got one more question?
Excuse me, I do have one
Okay.
more question. Has there been any traffic studies conducted for the amount of additional traffic that would flow through downtown Frankfurt? Also, how many visitors are you anticipating per day?
That is all part of the next phase. So that is what the architects will do based on the function of the building. So the function has to come first of what's in there to determine what that usage level is. And those are all very important questions. Certainly Locust has a lot of traffic already due to baseball, football, but what I would say that if we were there versus what the current function is that I don't think you'll see very many semis barreling down Locust Street. But certainly traffic on both Maple and Locust and through the downtown is very important to those who live here.
What Borg Warner had told us also is that they had approximately 700 employees that worked there. So if they were 700 employees, there was probably 700 cars, but there was probably 3 shifts. So you're still looking at you know, a couple hundred people a day utilizing those roads back and forth. So there has been a lot of traffic, or at least that much traffic at this time.
Last call for any questions? Again, I thank everyone for their time, and we hope that you'll take the time to provide feedback on April 6th. Thank you, and be careful going home. It sounds like it's raining.